Welcome, Vault Dwellers. My name is Nacho Bidness, and today we are going to cover keypad doors. Now, I have already done a very basic tutorial on the basic rules of how to wire a keypad door, and if you watch that, you will end up with something that is functional, but maybe not as cool as it could be. And so today we're going to cover some more advanced features, some things that I think can help take this little build to the next level. So to cover what we're going to learn today, we're going to learn how to wire up this decon arch so that it only fires when we come into the base, and it only fires briefly. And that's nice because even with a fusion generator that creates 100 power, I don't necessarily have the power to run everything all the time here. And so the extra efficiency that we gain by only running the decon arch when we need it is pretty nice. And the fact that it's automatic and we don't have to mess around with that switch is also pretty nice. Next thing we're going to cover is using a pressure plate to be able to walk out of the door without having to hit any switches or turn back around and close it behind us or anything. And the next feature is this button right here that locks the door open. That's nice if you're going to be in and out of here and at your base for a while, so that you don't have to mess around with constantly entering the code every time you want to go inside. Next two features are that we've got an audible alarm and a visual indicator that let us know when this door is locked open. I am a fairly forgetful guy, and sometimes I will forget to lock my door behind me when I leave, and I have come home and found other players up here with my more expensive workbenches, and especially that decontamination arch, and was worried, to say the least. So that is what we're going to cover today. Let's get started. And we're back. So we're ready to start building our door contraption here. I've gone ahead and stored everything, or moved everything out of the way. To start off with, we're going to put some conduits down, and that's because I have this particular setup so tight into the wall that if I don't put this down first, I won't be able to place the conduits after placing the wall. So I start off with a three-way conduit here, and that's going to be our input power for the entire contraption. You can see that it hooks into the rest of the conduit network in the base that all currently has power on it. The next thing that I want here is just a short piece of conduit and finally a one-way conduit end there. And I do that because I like to have this poster near the door for two reasons. One, I would just like this particular poster. Two, it serves as an indicator light for me to tell me that there is power in these conduits. The next thing that I want is I want one of the conduit that is going from ceiling to floor or floor to ceiling, depending on how you look at it. That is going to serve as power for our pressure plate, and I like doing it that way because it's just less wires exposed and just makes for a little bit neater installation. So now that we've got our conduits down that are going to be close into the door, we can put our door down, but you can see that there's a bit of a problem there. It doesn't want to go down facing the right way with the keypad out. Now, I demonstrated in my basic video how to use foundations to get a door on the first floor to face the proper direction, but we have a second floor door here. What do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove that wire, and that is going to allow me to turn this wall inside out. From there, I can put down my keypad door because it will face off the wall below it. 3055 is going to be the code for this. So I'm just going to temporarily hook power straight to that middle conduit on the door so that I can get out and put down my reminder for what this code is. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I like to do this in-game because I tend to lose the piece of paper that I write down my codes on. I also like to offset the code by 1 so that if another player happens to find it, it's not immediately obvious what this number in the back of my crapper is. And oops, get out of the build mode and close the door. So just double check that that was the right code. 2055. Oops, was it 3055? Yep, so it flashed green. That means that that is the correct code, and I've gone and used the wrong one here. So I'm just going to store that and place down the correct number so that if I forget, I have a reminder. And I don't necessarily want to leave that wall that way, and I also don't want to disconnect my siren here that sounds when someone sets off my trap. So I'm going to face the wall the direction that I want, and I can do that because I've got an external foundation there and I'm able to select which way the wall faces. What I'll do now is something that a number of people have showed off this trick, but if you replace the wall with a doorway, you can wire through it and then replace it again with a solid wall, and the wire goes right through the solid wall. Some folks may say that that doesn't look right, but in my mind, my character has a drill, and he can drill a hole in a wall and put a wire wherever he wants. So now that we've got the structure set up, we're ready to start wiring some of the other features. First off, we need to wire the keypad switch on the outside of the door, and that is simplicity itself. All you have to do is take your input power and hook it to this inside switch, and that will activate the keypad on the outside of the door. Next thing that I want to do is set up my pressure plate so that I will be able to pass in and out of the door from inside of the base. So I just try and snug that in close to the wall. Sometimes you have to go in and out of the build mode when you're trying to put things very close together, and that's probably good enough. I'm not going to obsess about getting it perfect in this tutorial and make you waste your time watching me fiddle with exact placement. Next thing I want here is I want this little floor conduit, and I'm going to hook that to another floor to ceiling conduit, and finally I want another ceiling conduit. That will allow us to pass power from the bottom of the door to the top of the door. And there we go. You can see that the pressure plate is now active. And when I step on that pressure plate, I'm now going to have power that comes in here, and I can hook this to the door. And I offset this way because if I try to put everything right next to each other, this is actually a decent placement. You see how if I had gone any more to my right, this would have intersected that conduit too much, and it would have made it so that I was not allowed to put these extra conduit pieces down. And at this point, our door is fully functional as a keypad operated door that we can run in and out of the base with. The next feature that I used here was a decon arch. You can do pretty much anything in lieu of this decon arch if you so choose. You could have a light that turns on, or maybe a turret that activates, or any number of different things. I like to face my decon arch this way for a couple of reasons. One, it just kind of snugs the actual arch in closer to the door. Two, this connector at the top is not exactly symmetric, and so having it face this way, it makes it an easier grab for this wire. And in fact, it looks like it's maybe going to need to shift just a little bit in order to hook up to that box. Now, okay. What we can do here is, since that wire was trying to pass through that conduit junction up top, we're just going to store that conduit junction for a moment and put our decon arch where we want and hook it to that inside switch. Anything that we want to run briefly while the keypad is activated on the outside, we can hook to this switch. What I have noticed is that wires may not pass through some things if they're already down, but you can often put these things down with the wire already in place, and it will go together that way. And that snapped to the ceiling for some reason. So I'm just going to try that again, and gosh darn it. And we're going to try that one more time. There we go. Now we can hook that output power to the door. So again, what we've got is we've got input power that comes to the switch on the wall and comes down that inside wall conduit to the pressure plate, and then the pressure plate goes back up and activates the center switch on the door that is not well documented. The next feature that I want to add here is I would like to add a switch on the wall to lock this door open so that when I run in and out, I am not having to constantly enter the code. I can just force the door open while I'm home, and then I can lock my door when I leave. So we're going to place a wall-mounted switch. And once again, we're going to go from our input power to the switch, and then we're going to go from the switch up to the output. Since the switch spawns in the on position, the door opens, and we can use that switch to open and shut the door at will without having to constantly enter the keypad code. And I just like to come out every once in a while, make sure there's no scorched running in from town. Now that we've got our switch set up, the next feature that I wanted to add was a light. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and turn that switch on. Sometimes these will spawn and work correctly. Looks like not this time, and that's okay. We're going to go ahead and leave the light there, and what we're going to do is assign the light to this switch. First thing to try is just move the switch ever so slightly, and that's all we needed in this case. Now I can turn that light on and off using that switch. Since I've been wiring with all of my other switches in this place in the off position, it means that I don't necessarily have to worry about that light turning on in response to another switch. Sometimes you will end up with a situation where you've got a power emitter that is too close to the light that you're trying to put on a switch. And to overcome that, it's fairly simple. What we'll do is we're going to get a ceiling mounted conduit here, and as soon as it decides to behave itself, we're going to put that down. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the input power from that switch. That's going to keep power from backfeeding through this little short circuit that we're doing into the rest of my circuits here. Next thing to do is disconnect my upper conduits here so that they will be dark and not have any power in them. I'm going to wire to my switch and wire to some input power over here. As soon as that wire decides to behave itself, that is. Let's try this one more time. Oh, booger. Come on, you were behaving yourself earlier when I practiced this. There we go. So you can see that we have accidentally broken all of our lighting assignments here, but it's not too bad to fix them. So first things first, I'm going to turn this switch on. And I'm doing it this way because I want to leave that in place. If I tried to remove that power emitter, assign the switch to the light, and then put the power emitter back down, the light would reassign to the power emitter. So we're just going to store that, and we're going to go back into our wall-mounted lights. And it says that it's floating when it's really not. We're just going to try that again. And now we can do a similar thing as before. You just barely move that switch. But, as I said, since sometimes you may have another power emitter too close, short-circuiting like this ensures that the light actually gets hooked to the switch that we want. So the next thing to do is go ahead and hook our main circuits back up, just like that, and hook our input power to our switch once again. As that. I am not convinced that that wire went where I wanted. Aha. See there? Tried to trick me, tried to go to the center pin of the door. So we're just going to restore this back to the way it was. We're going to hook our input power to our switch. We're going to hook the output of the switch to the output node. And finally, we're going to scrap these wires and store that conduit. And we're back to what we wanted, which is we have a switch that is operating our light. Not sure why the beacon arch is going. It really shouldn't be. Must be, aha, I think I accidentally hooked up one too many wires to that. So, oh This is what happens sometimes when you try and pack this stuff in too deep. So to review, the decon arch goes to the keypad door inside switch, and the output node goes back down. I said the output node goes back down. I said, annoyingly, that the output node goes back down. It gets hooked to the door and also to the output of our switch. I may cut this section out as far as reassigning the light. I'll have to go back and watch this to see. Nevertheless, we're back to a point where everything that we have built so far is working just the way we want it to. And we can just double check that our other switches are not turning off on or off lights that we do or don't want. That blinking light I definitely want assigned to my add switch here, so that's working correctly. Final feature of this door was an audible alarm, and that is extremely simple to wire. All we have to do is set it down pretty much anywhere and hook it straight to our wall-mounted switch. Again, that wall-mounted switch allows us to run in and out of the base without messing with the keypad. And as you can see, if you squeeze that speaker in, the wire actually will just disappear. And I like to use, where is it? It was, I believe, the square wave speaker. Seems to give the noise that is the loudest that can be heard for the longest distance. I'm going to put my square wave speaker in. I'm going to move it in. Nope, first I'm going to wire it. And then I'm going to move it in tight to the wall. Wire disappears, and the only remaining things to do are decorate. I like to label my switches, mainly because a lot of times I have enough of them I can sometimes forget what they're supposed to do. One thing I have noticed is that for some reason on this keypad door wall, a wall-mounted switch, you see there, the letters sink right through the switch. I don't know what's up with that. I'm able to label these switches directly on the switch, but for whatever reason, when the switch is mounted to the keypad wall, it will actually sink through the wall. In fact, that second letter also. Oh. Yeah. It's doing its usual booger. Anyways, so there, demonstrated it sank through the wall, but we can go and put some other letters down directly on the wall, and they show up just fine. So there you have it. The only other thing you want to do is if you want to have any decorations on the outside of the door, you can do that. I like these very charming wind chimes outside the door. And there you have it. We've wired all the features that I showed in the demo. Everything is working as intended, and we're good to go. So I hope you found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like down below. If you didn't like, please tell me why in the comments so that I can try and do better for you next time. I do have more 76 content planned, so if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe. I think the next tutorial video might be wiring up the trap that I have downstairs. So stick around and stay tuned for that. Until next time, my name is Nacho Bidness, and I'm saying it's a great big wasteland out there. Let's go have fun in it.